Okay, so as I said in the previous video, what we need to do now in the final step in our parser is going to be to actually save our image, okay? So what we have now is we have this URL, we're identifying it and we're extracting it, but we need to actually do the exercise of actually fetching it. So we need to download this physical image, okay? Okay, so how do we do this? Well, let's create another helper function. So static method, def fetch image. Okay, and here instead of passing the entire soup, so the entire HTML wrapped around our beautiful soup library, we're just going to pass the image URL, okay? Okay. Because simply we don't need the entire soup object, we just need the URL itself as a string. Okay, so first we need to fetch the image. So let's say image request is equal to URL fetch, and we're going to pass in the image URL. Okay, so now we have a response there, and so now we need to test whether or not the fetch was successful. So we can say, so in other words, basically if it didn't return some kind of 404, even though it shouldn't, because we're parsing the recipe and we're finding these URLs of images, but maybe the image URL is broken or something. You never know. So we have to test if image request dot status underscore code is equal to 200, we know that status code is correct. We're going to start manipulating the image. The first thing we can do is we can simply generate some kind of title for this image. So the easiest way to do it, we could say, for example, image title is equal to image URL, for example. So the title is really irrelevant because cloud storage will anyway assign a different title to it. But what is to the actual downloadable image or to the serving path, but it's relevant when you want to when you're saving it to your cloud storage API, because this will determine basically in which directory it's saved within your bucket. Okay, remember we created a bucket in the Google Cloud Storage, so it's going to determine in which directory within the bucket it's going to sit in. So if you remember, I'm just going to create a comment. Our path was GS to indicate that it was a Google Cloud Storage. Then I believe it was something like YS2 recipe images. If it's not exactly this, then don't worry. This is just to demonstrate the point. Then we appended something dynamic, a %s, to indicate the user ID and then the actual name of the photo or something like that. Well, here we don't have a user ID, so we can, for example, say this will be food.com. So we know it comes from food.com. And then here, if we start appending the URL of the image, then this will be, for example, http / let's say food.com images. This URL is not going to be true, but anyway, just to demonstrate the point. Recipes and blah blah blah. Okay, doesn't matter. Now if we simply just append the URL, what we're actually doing is we're creating a bunch of directories. So we're creating a directory http : then 2 empty directories, and then the directory food inside of these 2 empty directories, and then images inside of food.com, and then recipes inside of images food.com, double empty directory http, so on and so forth. So this directory structure can become very painful. So to avoid doing that, we can do a simple thing. We can simply hash this image URL, and then so this will become just some random text and numbers, right? So this will become something like this. Okay, so this is much cleaner because it's just going to be one directory. Okay, and as I said before, we don't really need this name here. It doesn't indicate anything to us, and whenever we call the getServingURL function, well, the Google App Engine will actually assign its own name to download the image, so it won't even take this into account. Okay, so let's go ahead and we need to import a library to hash this. So let's say from hashlib import MD5. So remember, this was one of the algorithms I said that wasn't safe enough for nowadays for storing passwords, but it's used for other things, and MD5 is pretty fast in computing, so we're just going to use this. We don't really care about security here. I'm going to delete the comment. Okay. So now we have the image title. Let's say the image content is going to be equal to image request dot content. Okay, and here you may start thinking, well, aren't we doing the exact same thing as we were doing in the account and the save image? Well, if you look here, well, we are. We have an image title, we have an image content, we are going to extract the image type, and then we will need to store the image, and we will need to return this object, okay? So I recommend you figure out a way of reusing this code, okay? Now it's slightly different because this is an image posted to us using a post request, and whereas this one here is an image fetched by the URL fetch library. So it's slightly different because we can't just, call the image dot, in this case, we can't say image request file read or something like that, which we have done here. We can't because, we're fetching the image, so we have to call the dot content, okay? So this is where it's slightly different, but I encourage you to think of a way where you could reuse at least most of this code. I'm sure you can reuse all of these lines, and actually you could probably reuse all of this, okay? So this is the part which will be different. So I encourage you to do that. I'm going to simply retype the code for one simple reason. Well, for two. One is because I want to demonstrate how I would do this differently, this line of code here, because here we introduced the /gs, and this made basically the file name break whenever we try to post an image, because this file name is never going to expect or accept a /gs starting in the cloud storage path. So this is why we had to do this kind of trick where we just slice the string from the third character onwards. Okay. So I'm going to demonstrate how I would do this differently than the first time I did this. And the second time, I think it's good to repeat stuff, and so that, the concepts cement in your head, okay? And if you didn't maybe fully understand it the first time, then hopefully you're going to understand it now, okay?